Okay, this is continuing chapter 21. It'll be called part 2. It is a very long chapter. And there's going to be other parts to it. It's my camera will only do 30 minutes at a time. The card I was using, I'm uploading to YouTube right now. It's amazing how long it takes when you first upload. The subsequent repostings that I've done, the upload goes real fast. Very fast. It's just been done so many times. Anyway, picking back up with part 1 of chapter 21, the book of Ezekiel is the key to understanding Isaiah 53. Ezekiel is told he will bear the punishment. Punishment that's for sins. As you see with the righteous servant, some of the words in the first 6 verses. Ezekiel's told he will bear the punishment of the houses of Israel and Judah, and he is punished, chastised, maltreated, bruised, and crushed to make him suitable to be a prophet to the Assyrian Babylon exiles and speak the words of God he is given during the ordeal. The teaching of Scripture. I think the phrase in Ezekiel is, "Eat this scroll, Ezekiel." This is what I want you to tell the exiles, is what he said. Read these things. Or let me teach them to you. And speak the words of God he is giving during the ordeal and the anguish of it. Now in 53 you can find that. It says, out of his anguish. I can't remember which verse it is. I think it's 11 or 12. Out of his anguish. The anguish is the fire of refinement. It's not scourging and crucifixion. Just like the righteous servant, except he is not crushed with disease and does not make himself an offering for guilt. God just seizes him. Yeah, there's so many different... God says, when I write verses, I have at least 3 different purposes for it, and sometimes 4. Rashi taught in the Middle Ages, and today Jews for Judaism and Rabbi Tovia Singer of Outreach Judaism teach to their flock. And on the internet with thousands of believing followers and probably thousands of disbelieving Christians, that God's righteous servant of Isaiah 53 is all of the Jewish people as one man, Israel. It's not. We got plenty of videos on that. Isaiah 53 is written for the identification of a particular man, not a man who symbolizes all of the people, not for how a man is perceived. The man described is God's representation, who brings before the Jewish people by his actions and words the will of God in the day of the Lord, as Moses did in the Exodus to the Promised Land. He is God's righteous servant, his messenger of the new covenant and reconciler of Jewish families, Elijah. His anointed one, the shepherd God calls my servant David, a shepherd, yeah. And his veritable mouthpiece on earth and writer of his words, a prophet like Moses. Isaiah 52, verse 13, and continuing for all of Isaiah 53, is a description of God's righteous servant who makes the many righteous by his knowledge with long life. It is not a song of the servant Israel, as first identified by Bernard Dunn in his 1897 commentary on Isaiah. Now, Bernard Dunn was a Protestant Lutheran theologian of the Christian Old Testament. It's the Hebrew Bible, although it's doctored up quite a bit. It is not Israel speaking as a single man. It does not declare Israel to be the righteous servant. It is only the only time the words "my righteous servant" are used by the Lord in the Scripture. All other times His chosen, the Jewish people, are simply called the servant. Righteous servant is particular to Isaiah 53. Rabbi Shlomo Vishaki, generally known today by the acronym Rashi, was a medieval French rabbi and author of a comprehensive commentary on the Talmud and commentary on the Tanakh. He is often referred to as the first rabbi to believe that the Jewish people, as one man Israel, are God's righteous servant. The early sages expected a personal Messiah to fulfill the Isaiah prophecy. No alternative interpretation was applied to this passage until the Middle Ages. Rashi held the position that the servant passages of Isaiah referred to the collective fate of the nation of Israel, rather than a personal Messiah. Some rabbis, such as Ibn Ezra and Kimitchi, agree. However, many other rabbis and sages during the same period and later, including Moses ben Maimon, commonly known as Maimonides, and often referred to by the acronym Rambam, a medieval Sephardic Jewish philosopher who became one of the most prolific and influential Torah scholars of the Middle Ages, realized the inconsistency of Rashi's views and would not abandon the original Messianic interpretations. Rashi's commentary on Isaiah 52, 13 through 15, supporting his position, conflicts with his commentary on the book, or in the book of Zechariah chapter 1, when he says, this is his comments you can find at Shabbat, under the Hebrew Bible, and Isaiah. No, Zechariah in this case. The prophecy of Zechariah is extremely enigmatic because it contains visions resembling a dream that requires an interpretation. We cannot ascertain the truth of its interpretation until the teacher of righteousness comes. Nonetheless, I will put my heart to recounting the verses one by one, according to the interpretations that resemble it and following the interpretation of Jonathan. I'm the teacher of righteousness, and I've answered it. You can find it in the book and on videos. I know the answer. It's in there, and you learn an awful lot about the angel of the Lord. That might be the title it's under. It has verses, it goes through verses 1 through 7 of Zechariah. And the angel of the Lord is present in the man standing amongst the myrtles. Some of the first written interpretations, or targums, ancient periphrases on biblical texts, see Isaiah 53 as referring to an individual servant, the Messiah, who would suffer. Messianic Jewish Talmudist Richard Freiland recounts these early views. Quote, our ancient commentators, with one accord, noted that the context clearly speaks of God's anointed one, the Messiah. Isaiah 11. The Aramaic translation of this chapter, ascribed to Rabbi Jonathan ben Uzziel, a disciple of Hillel, who lived early in the 2nd century, begins with the simple and worthy words, "Behold, my servant Messiah shall prosper. He shall be high and increase, and be exceedingly strong, as the house of Israel looked to him through many days, because their countenance was darkened amongst the people, and their complexion beyond the sons of men." We find the same interpretation in the Babylon Talmud. Quote, "What is the Messiah's name?" the rabbi said. "His name is the leper scholar. As it is written, surely he hath borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we did not esteem him. No, we did esteem him a leper, smitten of God, and afflicted," which I've covered, afflicted by God. Similarly, in an explanation of Ruth, chapters 2, verse 14, in the Midrash Rabbah, it states, he is speaking to the king Messiah, "Come hither, draw near to the throne, and dip thy morsel in the vinegar." This refers to the chastisements, as it is said, "But he was wounded for our transgressions, bruised for our iniquities." The Zohar, in its interpretation of Isaiah 53, points to the Messiah as well. There is in the Garden of Eden a place named the Palace of the Sons of Sickness. This palace the Messiah enters, and he summons every pain and every chastisement of Israel. All of these come and rest upon him. And had he not thus lightened them upon himself, there had been no man able to bear Israel's chastisement for the transgression of the law, as it is written, "Surely our sickness he has carried." That's the Zohar. Okay, this chapter goes into like 3 different phases. This is an explanation of why other Bibles don't have the quotes. Rashi's commentary on Isaiah 52 and 53, translated from Hebrew to English in the translation of the Tanakh by Art Scroll, and you can find it on Shabbat.org, which is an imprint of translations, books, and commentaries from an Orthodox Jewish perspective, published by Masor Publications Limited. Can be found online, and as well as Shabbat.org, and the translation of the verses and Rashi's commentary are identical. My commentary on Isaiah 53, 13 through 15, and Isaiah 53 is based on the translation of the Jewish Publication Society, who began to consider a new edition of the Bible and the concept of a completely new translation gradually took hold. And the task was begun in 1955 or 56. The same year Sputnik went up, the internet had begun. And also, I was born in 57. This guy waited until the last minute. He could have talked to me before I was 50. But anyway. And published, it began in 55 and published in 1985. That's the version you want. Their earlier versions, the JPS, they don't have the quotes. There had been some changes to it, trying to make the Hebrew better to English, or they were using something that had been translated to Greek to English, and those are really problematic. and directly from the traditional Hebrew text, the Leningrad Codex, the oldest Hebrew Bible we have. I'm going to take 1 second to go shut my parents' door. I can hear their TV. Sorry about that. They don't hear very well. They're both in their 90s. The Leningrad Codex is the oldest complete edition of the Hebrew Bible in existence. It dates to around 1008 AD. However, the Leningrad Codex, although complete, is not the best quality Hebrew manuscript. Although carefully handwritten, it was corrected against the Aleppo Codex, and the Aleppo Codex remains the best quality manuscript. The Leningrad Codex is so reliable that it is the Hebrew text from which nearly all modern translations have been translated. I have been unable to find the source of the Art Scroll and Shabbat translation of the Hebrew Bible into English. It is not directly from the Leningrad Codex or the Aleppo. It could be translation from a Masoretic text derived from the Leningrad Codex or the Aleppo Codex, or even the Greek translation called the Septuagint, later translated to English, that is the source of the Christian Holy Bible Old Testament. Isaiah 53:10 is the one verse that cannot be proven by witnesses as having occurred, and it is the most controversial. With the translation of Art Scroll and Shabbat, like the Christian Bible, two of the most important parts of the Isaiah 53:10 translation directly from the Leningrad Codex are different, completely changing the meaning and purpose of this misunderstood verse. The Art Scroll and Shabbat translation is, "And the Lord wished to crush him. He made him ill." The JPS said he was crushed with, God chose to crush him with disease. "If his soul makes itself restitution, he shall see children. He shall prolong his days, and God's purpose shall prosper in his hand." Okay, that's just a complete change from what the JPS has. The Christian Holy Bible translation is, "Yet it pleased the Lord to bruise him. He hath put him to grief. When thou shalt make his soul an offering for sin, he shall see his seed. He shall prolong his days, and the pleasure of the Lord shall prosper in his hand." Totally different from what the JPS says. This is the Jewish Publication Society. "But the Lord chose to crush him by disease, that if he made himself," not his soul or anything. I have to explain souls and spirit to you someday. "That if he made himself an offering for guilt." Okay, that's where Tovia Singer comes up with guilt offering. I don't know. I think he couldn't figure out what this meant, that he made himself an offering for guilt, and he just decided, the Hebrew to English was talking about a guilt offering, which is an offering of unblemished rams under Leviticus, which he goes to. Well, first of all, and he uses the murder of the Holocaust as the unblemished rams. Well, of course, they were blemished. They're not perfect people, not like the story of Jesus. Although I have a top 10 of the lives of Jesus put together, and they're in the New Testament. You can't miss them if you're looking. Christians don't look for it. "And that through him the Lord's purpose might prosper. God had Isaiah write Isaiah 53, just as he had Moses write the Torah, at his command and direction. The multiple purposes of how Isaiah 53 is written were no more possible for Isaiah to know that Moses could have known the multiple purposes of the Torah and the 613 laws of God for the Jewish people derived from its books. Isaiah 53 was written with the knowledge of God that the Gentiles would take the book of the children of the book, the chosen ones, the Jewish people, and call it their own. And they did. And they changed the name to Old Testament. That they would do it based on the animal sacrificial atonement and worship laws of the Torah. Isaiah 53 was also written for the day of the Lord and his vindication of the Jewish people for all the wrongs the world brought upon them by the teachings of Christianity. His wrath being passed to the Christians from the Jewish people in Isaiah 51. And of course, my description begins in 52, Moshiach, and 53, righteous servant. Meaning, I am to teach you, the servant, what kind of wrath he wants y'all to put on the Christian. This is not a time of world peace, Messianic era people. No, by no means. God's got vengeance on his mind. And you don't want to get in his way, in my opinion. Or at least I can't. I'm enveloped in his power. The primary purpose of verse 10 is to make certain that the animal sacrificial, atonement, worship laws of the Torah cannot be used for the man described. You cannot offer an animal with defect, an animal that is blemished. So God blemishes the man, afflicted by God. In other words, you can't put Jesus in there, and it's done by God on purpose. No man would refuse God, and God does not need a man's permission to make him a servant. He is God. In the book of Ezekiel, God seized him and made him suitable for the purpose of being a prophet to the Assyrian Babylon exiles in God's fire refinement. We had an agreement, but that again is multi-purpose statement. This is from Ezekiel 3, verses 7 through 9. God speaking. But the house of Israel will refuse to listen to you, for they refuse to listen to me. For the whole house of Israel are brazen of forehead and stubborn of heart. But I will make your face as hard as theirs, and your forehead as brazen as theirs. I will make your forehead like adamant, harder than flint. Do not fear them. Do not be dismayed by them. They are a rebellious breed. That's the fire refinement. How is he going to make it tough? Make him face brazen, forehead like adamant, and not to be dismayed or fear his people. What he's putting me through, what I'm teaching you about the fire refinement, God's boot camp for prophets. I mean, I would suggest that all 20 of the prophets, if they were conversing with God and writing his words, they went to some form of it. It's been 16 years for me. Now, it started out first 5 years, not so bad, but bad. I was real volatile. And when he would make my emotions flare in one way or another, it was very intense. And the second 5 years, we started writing the blogs, which became chapters. And it steadily got worse. And he doesn't want me to go through there's so many stories. I wish we had kept a diary, but God said we don't need one. So that's that. And the last 5 years, I've been putting the books together pretty much. And over the last 5 years, each year has gotten more brutal. I told God, it's just an example. I see all these words: wounded, punishment, maltreated, chastised, crushed and bruised. I said, but you know, what you really should have in here is torture, torment, and heinous acts of cruelty. That's how I would describe what he's put me through. And I'm not talking about for 5 minutes. I'm talking about by the time we got to 2022 last year, it was the entire year, one way or another, every single day and all through the night. Lots of sleep deprivation. Just brutal. Now, 2023 has gotten a lot better in February. I can't say why, but it's still, I mean, I'm still in the fire. There's a lot of things that he's still doing to me that he's done for years now, 5, 6, 7 years. But it's easier. It's easier. And I enjoy doing something. He's been asking me, do you want to redo the book? Put it on new video so it doesn't look so bad. And I said, yeah. He said, I'll think about it. Okay. So, that's the fire of refinement. That's why Ezekiel is, like I said, the backup for all the things I'm saying. The purpose and meaning of Isaiah 53 is completely changed if it is not fulfilled by a particular man defected in body and blemished in the day of the Lord by making himself an offering for guilt that has nothing to do with the restitution by the souls of all Jewish men and women at one time, or the animal sacrificial laws of the Torah for the forgiveness of sin, or in Tovia Singer's guilt, by the sacrifice of an unblemished lamb, which I guess they consider the soul of Jesus, or unblemished ram, the restitution of the souls of 6 million Jews murdered in the Holocaust, according to Rabbi Singer of Outreach Judaism. Now, it says a guilt offering. It sounds like it's an offering that will remove guilt. You offer an unblemished lamb, you're forgiven of unintentional sins. The Christians believe it covers all sins. But that's not what it's for. No, it's a compensation sacrifice for destruction of religious relics. And you got to pay money to the rabbi. What good is that? Why would you have that in 53? Step out of the box and think about what you just wrote. And he doesn't tell you. You've got his 53:10 if you've been following my books or my videos and my posts. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And he makes it sound like it's Hitler who's the righteous servant who does this offering that, again, is for compensation. Jews didn't owe him anything. But he says, as his portion, he received lampshades made out of the skins of the Jewish people as his portion, which is, I think, in verse 11. Yeah, no, his portion is the many. It's the people I attract to me, the few people I can get to believe. Who can believe what we have heard? People who will go out there and say, I think it's this man. I believe it's this man. Because he has way too much knowledge. And books that, you can't go to a bookstore and find this book. You can find it on the internet, however. And when they're published, and again, this looks like an attack on Judaism, it's not. It's just trying to straighten it up. They just drop the ball too many times, things they don't know. They say Jacob wrestles with an angel. No, Jacob tells you he wrestled with a man, divine beings. Now, that man knows the divine beings are them because the Spirit of God is lit and entered him, and God's in his spirit, and God's talking to him. Say, I got something for you to do. Okay? You see that guy over there with his head on a rock sleeping? Go jump on him and start wrestling. And then